GoBots, and you control their every move. Behold, by Tor, Copter, Turbo, and Side.
If you're a fan of my work on this channel, then it's safe to assume that you like Transformers. I'm going to go out on an even further limb here to say that you might even know of the existence of GoBots. But if you don't, then as quickly as possible, GoBots was a toy line created by Tonka in the 80s to rival Transformers. It ran with the same idea of two factions of robots who could transform, fighting an endless war for ultimate authority over their own kind. In the later half of the 1980s, Tonka went out of business. They and their brands were acquired by Hasbro. Because of this, GoBots has been showing up here and there in Transformers stories as Easter eggs, callbacks to their original shows, and more. The name GoBots has even been used in tandem with Transformers for a few toy lines in the early 2000s. Now, I'm not here to give you a whole rundown of the franchise itself. Other creators like Chris McFeely have already done this. But what I am here to do is have an in-depth conversation about the 2019 GoBots comic book, written, drawn, colored, and lettered all by Tom Scioli, and published by IDW. GoBots opens on Earth as we follow along with three fighter pilots on a top-secret mission in enemy territory. What is supposed to be a stealth mission quickly turns into a bloody battle, as fighter pilot Beaky is shot down by enemy planes. Pilot Nick Burns leads the charge down to the surface. You see, Burns' plane is in fact Leader 1, a military-trained GoBot who turns the tide in this skirmish and helps save the hostages located on site. It's a brief yet interesting opener, especially as the hostage takers in the story here are not named or specified, nationally speaking. Perhaps the use of AK-47s and the silhouetted outlines of very specific uniform pieces does give us a clue as to who these enemies might be, but I feel like the anonymity of these villains is for a reason, especially when we later see Leader 1 casually reference attacking China or Russia. Leader 1 and his constituents are at the top of the food chain. They can take on any global power as if it were nothing. Elsewhere, within a major city on Earth, we are introduced to AJ and her GoBot, Scooter, who's trying to get them to school on time. Scooter belongs to AJ. He is her, scooter, to get around the city. While the two do have a friendship on display, it's shown to us that Scooter is property when AJ asks him to get some ride shares for extra cash. Scooter obliges, and there are no hard feelings on display, but it is an early look at the relationship that exists between man and machine. Through these characters, as well as AJ's teacher, Professor Braxis, we learn of the origins of the GoBots. Originally designed to solve a parking crisis, GoBots have enveloped nearly every corner of humanity, such as the military complex, leisure, space operations, and even racing. Said racing is then focused on as we see famed race car driver Matt Hunter win yet another race with the help of his GoBot car, Turbo. Hunter is a sleazy man, surrounding himself with alcohol and scantily clad women, all while taking the glory for himself, and reminding Turbo that he is just a machine. Turbo resents Hunter for this, saying that none of his fame would have been achievable without his help, but Hunter is unconvinced. While stumbling around in the night, searching for his next celebration, Hunter is visited by a man named T. Coriander Banks. Driven around by the limousine GoBot named Stretch, Banks is a strange, round-shaped, almost silver-skinned individual who likes to wear sunglasses at night, just like Hunter, and he has a proposition for the famed racer. Deep beneath the city's streets lie an underground fighting ring for GoBots who have broken free of their servitude to humanity. Ironically, even though these GoBots possess more freedom than others, they still live and die for humanity's use, acting as gladiators in this underground arena. The champion of said arena, Psykill, demands a worthy enemy to face, when the crowd chants on for Turbo to jump in the ring. Before being able to leave, though, Hunter is thrown in by the human attendees and only escapes with his life due to Turbo's protection. Here is where we learn another interesting item about the GoBots, that being their G-chips. G-chips are integral to the functioning of a GoBot, as they restrict certain functions such as the ability to harm humans and even fellow GoBots. There's a short yet insightful exchange when Psykill asks why Turbo fights for the humans, to which Turbo responds, "Why fight for their amusement?" showing us that these GoBots are not too different after all. Hunter and Turbo escape, only to return with the authorities to find nothing remains of the underground gladiator arena, save for the bodies of not only dead GoBots, but humans alike. Returning to Leader 1 and Burns, we see as they are directed by military generals to investigate sightings of GoBot attacks throughout the United States. These sightings are backed up by a victim of these attacks, who is noticeably scared when Leader 1 enters the room. The victim recounts the events that unfolded as he was asked to fill up a car at his gas station. He says that the driver invited him in with her great, sexy voice, only for him to discover she was a GoBot. He's flustered and asks where her master is, a question which leads her to lock the doors and drive recklessly with him in the cabin. The attendant is let out, bruised and bleeding, and is reminded that humans do not ride GoBots, but GoBots ride humans. Very strange choice of words here, especially following the detail that this GoBot, named Crasher, has a sexy voice. After this threat, Crasher stole all the gas, money, and bullets from the store. What she had in mind with taking the money is beyond me, really. With this new information, Leader 1 and Burns are able to track down Psykill's band of renegades in the desert, but not before being attacked by fellow GoBot Copter, causing Leader 1 to fly closer to the ground. The renegades scatter, but Leader 1 is able to ambush Psykill, and a brawl starts. During this beatdown, Psykill asks if Leader 1 has one of them inside of him, referring to Burns. He can not only sense the presence of the human, but he also knows that Burns is injured. He questions if the human is still alive inside of Leader 1, saying that the GoBots are treated like toys for humans to play with and discard. Leader 1 tries his best to combat the words of Psykill, asking what the world would become if humans were not in charge. Psykill, spouting his anti-human rhetoric, is quite forthcoming when he suggests the nuking of all humankind in order to cleanse the earth. Leader 1 demands Psykill surrenders, but is overtaken by the renegade mob, who soon use him to extract nuclear launch codes via the GoBot Tank, who is able to acquire them from Leader 1's head. Psykill, now with the ability to erase mankind, sets off to conquer the world and the oppressors that rule it. He even says that he will make this a planet of GoBots, something that is obviously a reference to the Planet of the Apes franchise, something that we will be circling back to soon. Meanwhile, AJ and Professor Braxis are having dinner, alone in the professor's house, something that is obviously very incorrect for a student and a teacher, no matter their ages, to be socializing in this way. The artwork on the page as well makes this entire exchange even more uncomfortable, as Braxis leads AJ down into his basement, where he locks her in with his own GoBot, Vamp. Scooter comes to the rescue and grabs AJ from the basement and immediately turns on Braxis for answers, who exclaims that it was all just a joke, a prank, just for a laugh. Ah yes, locking your student in your basement with a monster is just a prank for YouTube. How fitting for 2018. But before the professor can answer for his crimes, Scooter and AJ take note of the GoBot revolution that has begun just outside. Scooter mentions that the Asimov laws have been broken and that GoBots are turning against their masters. The Asimov law is more commonly known as the 3 Laws of Robotics, written by Isaac Asimov and most recognized from his work, I, Robot. These laws are as follows. 1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. The GoBots have gained true autonomy, and AJ questions if her lifelong friend Scooter will join the revolution and betray her. In a flashback sequence, we see Screwhead and his human counterpart Vernon working deep within Earth's mines, digging tunnels. Screwhead mentions that their work is almost done and that Vernon will be able to make his daughters play. A classic one day away from retirement gag, as the cave collapses and the two are buried deep beneath the crust of the Earth. In the present day, Screwhead mentions that he was able to claw his way out, that Vernon died in the rubble, and that their bosses knew the mine shafts were unstable. Our lives mean nothing to them. Our deaths mean even less. Psykill uses this opportunity to rally Screwhead and other GoBots to continue their revolution, which includes the disposing of Leader One's body, as well as the burning of a store titled Big Pharma. Attacking the city's newly built power plant, the GoBots manage to shut down the electricity of the humans and run amok of the streets. As we have seen before, and will continue to see, the tone of this comic swings back and forth wildly, as we comically watch a car hood chomp on a human, to then experience Psykill launching multiple citizens in the air with his foot. AJ and Scooter reassure each other that nothing will jeopardize their friendship, and take off in a stylish recreation of the well-known Akira pose. We also see the first appearance of a well-known GoBot, Bugbite, as he executes helpless civilians in a diner. AJ and Scooter run into Hunter and Turbo atop a city building and begin a decently lengthened section of the comic where the page is mainly filled with dialogue bubbles. So much so that there's moments it's hard to see who's talking. We do discover that the G-chips in the GoBots are malfunctioning, but that because Turbo is a nice guy, nothing will change his view on humans. Hunter suggests they leave the issue up to the cops, who arrive and turn out to be GoBots themselves, who have joined the revolution, forcing our main characters to yet again flee. In a junkyard, Leader 1 is about to be scrapped for spare metal before escaping and throwing his captors into a car crusher. It's a simple section of the issue, and yet a wonderful display of the retro art and action direction used. That style is continued as we return to AJ, Hunter, Scooter, and Turbo as they evade the police, jumping off of a bridge and causing the enemy GoBots to fall to their demise. Shortly after, Hunter makes a stop at a liquor store to stock up on booze. After all, it is the end of the world. We see that the military has resorted to using older technology that is not tied into the GoBot systems to take care of this new global threat. Humans are being tossed back and forth, zoos are being destroyed, and an injured human is rescued by an ambulance, only to discover he's going in for a last-minute surgery. Hopefully he has good insurance. AJ and the rest of the group arrive at the Tonka building, the manufacturers of the GoBots, in search for data that might be able to restore all GoBots to their original G-chip statuses. Within the building, they meet a lone technician and his own GoBot, Spoons, who we're told is harmless. The technician goes on to explain that no amount of code work could fix the GoBots, as they are autonomous beings who now crave the extinction of mankind. The comic once again becomes all too philosophical in this moment, as the technician says that GoBots began as fiction. Fiction is the waiting room for reality. We just built them. It's your job to parent them. We made them like us, and they found us lacking." Outside the Tonka building, the group sees a man strung up in nearby power lines, causing Hunter to empty his liquor bottles and request that the GoBots fill them up. When asked, with what, he tells Scooter and Turbo, "What do you think?" If this moment is supposed to show us that Hunter is ready to fight and is requesting the GoBots to fill the bottles with gasoline to create Molotov cocktails, then I question the logic, as the liquor in the bottles would have done the trick. Why empty them to put gasoline in? Who knows? In the skies above, the humans are locked in a dogfight with GoBots Fightor until they are saved by the return of Leader 1. The man strung up in the power lines turns out to be Banks, who reveals that he had GoBotics experts tamper with the bloodlust levels of the GoBots in order to capitalize on the gladiator arena. He does also mention that the military themselves have been softening the first rule of Asimov's law in order to allow the GoBots to conduct missions around the globe. But I'd like to imagine that within a GoBot's settings there is a specific value assigned to bloodlust that they simply increased by a few numbers. This code change then spread from GoBot to GoBot like a virus, affecting even Banks' own GoBot Stretch, who advances towards Turbo. Turbo is no match for Stretch, and is launched downwards into the earth as Scooter gets a taste of Crasher's wheel. All of this madness is then halted when Cykill arrives to taunt Scooter by attempting to eat AJ. Scooter is able to break free and knock Cykill over, allowing AJ to be caught by Hunter, just as Professor Braxis arrives with his vamp to watch the scene unfold. In a direct one-to-one recreation of a famous scene of Wolverine from the Marvel Comics, we see that Turbo is still alive in the sewer system of the city, and that he is not yet done with Cykill, who once again brings back the strangest line of all time and asks Scooter if he wants to ride or be ridden. Cykill then forcefully rides Scooter around the city as a form of torture before attempting to execute him, stopped only by Turbo, who demands this revolution be ended. The two charge against each other and clash, only for Cykill to stand victorious. The city is now split between Cykill and his followers, and Leader 1 and many undisclosed GoBots who have just now shown up to fight for humanity. But the two do not immediately fight, as the military steps in and begins their own attack on all GoBots alike. Cykill states that he does want to keep some humans alive. After all, who will serve the GoBots in his new empire, if not humans? But the two GoBots do finally begin their battle with each other, and it's a brutal one at that, with jaws being dislocated and a scene where Leader 1 is dragged around on the ground via a wire from his own neck by Cykill. But Leader 1 gets the upper hand and forces Cykill to crash into a nearby building while yet again stating my least favorite line ever: "Ride or be ridden." In the aftermath of this battle, Cykill accuses Leader 1 for being no better than he is. After all, Leader 1 was made for war. Now this causes Leader 1 to have a moment of reflection, as he opens his chest and removes the corpse of his human counterpart, Nick Burns. While contemplating his next move, various GoBots call out to Leader 1 demanding that he lead the new revolution, all while Turbo urges him to return the world to its natural order, a world where GoBots serve humanity. Out in space, 4 humans are awoken when they near planetfall of a newly discovered inhabited world by their GoBot ship, Space C. Upon arrival, the humans are immediately under attack by local GoBot monsters, which Space C is able to dispatch with relative ease, as well as catch the humans in their rover before they fall off the edge of the planet. If you are familiar with the original GoBot TV show, then you'll recognize this planet as Gobotron, the homeworld of the GoBots. But something larger and scarier is just beneath the surface of Spacey, that being the terrifying Zod, a beast-like creature with large teeth and 3 gigantic wheels to roll around on. Spacey is saved by a fellow yet mysterious GoBot led by one known as Royalty. This king of the GoBots turns out to be Leader 1, who mentions he's been hunting Zod for years. Obviously, there has been some type of time jump in the story. Perhaps we are seeing the true origins of the GoBots. The humans inside of Spacey, like us the reader, are confused as to how they stumbled upon a planet with English-speaking GoBots, and what awaits them next as Spacey is thrown into a cell aboard the giant walking creature known as the Command Center. This fella is extremely cute, especially when he's sitting down via command. What a good boy. While in prison, Spacey helps his fellow astronauts sneak out of their cell using ventilation tunnels, after seeing a chamber titled the Dematerializer. Some of these humans still view Spacey as more of a machine than anything else, and they want to save their own skin. While climbing through the ship, the humans eavesdrop on a conversation being held by Leader 1 and 3 colorful cloaked figures. The halls of this chamber are littered with spikes that house the heads of dead GoBots, a way to strike fear into the hearts of enemies, and also to display the accomplishments of the current GoBot king. These 3 mysterious figures belong to the Trade Federation, and they warn Leader 1 that his failed attempts to destroy Zod have not gone unnoticed, and further their point by mentioning the myth of a Road Ranger who has descended from kings. Their warning to Leader 1 ends with mention that whoever kills Zod will be considered the new king of Gobotron. It is also undeniable that the artwork on display of this mysterious Road Ranger is a direct reference to the infamous drawing of Captain America from Rob Liefeld. Spacey is brought out of his prison cell to be questioned. The humans watch on as they memorize the secret code to unlock the doors, being a simple code from a familiar device known as the Simon Says toy. Leader 1 conducts the interrogation and demands answers, which Spacey gives, only to be beaten right after. Leader 1 is disgusted to hear that Spacey is from Earth, something that he claims is forbidden to speak of. Outside and aboard the command center, Leader 1 is visited by the Dark Angel, Eno, and told to follow along if he is capable. At the center of Gobotron lies the Laser Lance, an item that holds the key to all of Leader 1's problems. As the title of this video suggests, we are entering the biblical section of this comic with the appearance of a Dark Angel. No, this is not explained, it just happens, and you need to get used to that. Back on board the command center, the humans break Spacey out of his cell. Right as he is about to tell them something vital, however, he is captured and taken once again to Leader 1. But Spacey is not going to be reprogrammed. The vision that Leader 1 experienced has led him to believe that this visiting GoBot is part of a larger mission. On the other side of Gobotron, we catch up with Cycle, who feeds an innocent GoBot to the terrifying Zod. A creature once believed to be wild and savage is actually under the command of the sociopathic GoBot. Aboard the command center, other GoBots mention to Spacey that they are impressed that Leader 1 has let him live, and that the food on board is not to their liking. The humans, still inside of Spacey, note that he hasn't spoke to them in quite a while, and they fear that he might go HAL 9000 on them, a reference to the supercomputer from 2001: A Space Odyssey. One of the astronauts even mentions that the GoBots have no culture of their own, and so they must have intercepted human television programs and stolen Earth's culture for themselves, once again showing us that not all humans see GoBots as equals. As the night fades, the GoBots fall asleep, something that they must do, apparently, all except for Leader 1, who notices an incoming night raid from none other than Cycle and his band of renegades, including Zod. Cycle demands that the Guardians come out and play, a reference to the 1979 film The Warriors. As the renegades flood the command center, Cycle notices all too late that this is a trap. The walls close in on his men, and the command center takes to the skies. But not far behind, Cycle has his men load Zod into his own starship, Thruster. The humans eject themselves from Spacey and inform him that they are tired of him and will be returning to Earth immediately. They ask him if he's coming, which is when he reveals that everyone they know on Earth is long dead by now. But before he can explain why, the command center is grabbed by Thruster. Upon maneuvering free from the renegades, GoBot TikTok mentions they need time to fire up the engines for a hyperspace jump, something that Leader 1 can provide via a dogfight out in open space. The Guardians are successful in completing their jump, just as Leader 1 returns to the command center, but they haven't gone to another galaxy. Instead, they've jumped to the other side of Gobotron to enter the core where the legendary laser lance is located. The core of Gobotron opens and the command center lands on another planet housed within Gobotron. This planet is made of rock and dirt, and upon landing, Spacey makes a run for it, leaving the Guardians behind. He doesn't get far though, as he missteps and falls into a lower surface area, where he is found by none other than Turbo and Scooter. Spacey is held at gunpoint by Turbo and questions Scooter's speech pattern. It is childlike and simple. Turbo reveals that an evil GoBot mangled Scooter's mind and would have done the same to him. This great evil is thought to be Cycle, but it is in fact revealed to be Leader 1. Turbo, still loyal to humanity, can smell the humans inside of Spacey and gestures them to come out, checking if they are harmed. After all, he still does not trust or know Spacey. The humans complain that Spacey has not been himself lately. He has kept them in cryosleep for far too long, and they no longer know where his true intentions lie. Turbo questions Spacey yet again and asks if he has told the humans where they truly are. As a fight between the two GoBots break out, the humans escape via their rover and drive through the organic rock world, passing by the infamous Rock Lords, also known from the original GoBots toy line. Finally, after making a stop, they take a sample of the land and discover that they are not on a foreign planet. They are, in fact, on Earth. Now at the center of an overgrown Earth city, the astronauts realize they no longer need their suits to survive, given the atmosphere. While questioning what went wrong on Earth, Turbo returns with Spacey and demands he tell them the truth. Spacey reveals that he received transmissions from Earth and watched the GoBot uprising happen from afar. He was happy that his kind were in charge against the humans, but as time went on, the situation grew worse and worse, and he decided to keep his humans within cryosleep to protect them. The astronauts realize that their world was encompassed by Gobotron, and believe themselves to be the last of the human race. However, they are incorrect, as Turbo shows them a group of naked, wild humans who gather around Scooter as if he was some kind of god. It is ultimately because of humanity's over-reliance on machinery that they have now devolved backwards in time. Not far off, Leader 1 and his Guardians realize that they have been followed by the renegades. His troops, like Smallfoot, are getting tired, and many of his men begin to realize that Leader 1 has become cruel over time. As this realization comes to pass, the renegades launch soldiers out to catch the native humans with fishing-like nets. Obviously, another reference to the Planet of the Apes franchise. Turbo and Spacey give chase to rescue the humans, and do so successfully until Zod is dropped from orbit onto the ground. His landing causes a large earthquake, which gives Leader 1 yet another vision, this time of the GoBot combiner known as Courageous, a godlike entity that further shows Leader 1 the way to the laser lance. In the wake of Zod's landing, Leader 1 and his Guardian troops evacuate the area and find Turbo, Scooter, and the humans, who mourn the loss of Spacey, now deceased after the explosion. Scooter is overjoyed to see Leader 1, an old friend, but Turbo has not forgotten the past. He has not forgotten that Leader 1 is to blame for Scooter's condition. The two set aside their differences in search for the laser lance in order to defeat Zod, an item that Scooter recognizes and claims he can guide them to. Meanwhile, aboard Thruster, Cycle plays with a bowl of wild humans, which also contains 2 of the 4 astronauts. He asks what the blue humans can do. He commands them to transform, and even to combine. Surely a nod to how humanity treated GoBots as toys, and as we in real life play with Transformers ourselves. Crasher, now donning a new paint scheme, declares how beautiful Cycle is, who reveals that he has his face worked on every fortnight to ensure it. The Guardians approach a location known as Skull Rock, when they are attacked by rock lords such as Sticks and Stones and Tombstone, warriors that belong to the evil Magmar. Our group is rescued by Boulder, Solitaire, and Nugget, rock lords themselves that fight against Magmar's evil schemes. They too know that the laser lance is buried deep within Skull Rock. The rock lords, or Golems as they call themselves, were not created by man nor GoBot, but rather fashioned into being from the earth by the gods themselves. Who these gods are is never revealed, but the Golem's ultimate goal is to achieve oneness with the earth. Further into Skull Rock, Leader 1 and the Guardians are met with hostility from Professor Braxis, who has now fused himself inside of a pod-like structure attached to his vamp. Braxis is a sickly creature who now controls an army of multiple vamps, looking for his next victims to wander too close to Skull Rock. He recognizes Scooter from their time before the GoBot uprising, and notices that Scooter is no longer a threat. Something has happened to him. Turbo recalls the horrible things done to his human friend AJ, who grew up to be an accomplished freedom fighter in the final days of humanity. He sets his sights against Braxis at first, but then turns to Leader 1, who he accuses for having ordered Scooter to execute AJ back in the war. Before the conflict can be resolved, the Vamps move in and begin attacking under Braxis's order. Cycle discovers the corpse of Spacey and uses it to track Leader 1 and the others, just as the 2 human astronauts silently escape and begin a hard reboot of Spacey's system. As Turbo and Leader 1 fight off the Vamps, Scooter is thrown to the side and stumbles upon a secret room which contains not only the laser lance, but also the body of Courageous, which acts as suits of armor for our heroes. With this newfound armor and the laser lance in hand, Leader 1 and the Guardians rise to the surface to face off against Cycle and Zod. But somehow, Leader 1 fumbles the ball so bad that Cycle swipes the lance out of his hands and breaks it over his leg. The response from Leader 1 on the following page sums up my own reaction to reading this. Cycle offers a chance for surrender from the Guardians. He's even willing to treat them as friends in his new empire. There's a brief exchange between Turbo and Crasher, as it is revealed there might be a hint of lost love. Yet another strange aspect to leave in, just like Crasher's voice being sexy. Before the Guardians can be slaughtered, though, Boulder returns with his own army of rock lords, self-titled The Rolling Stones That Gather No Moss. Boulder and his fellow rock lords command every stone and pebble on the earth and use this power to collapse the ground from underneath Cycle, Zod, and the Renegades. With a moment to recover, Leader 1 thanks Boulder for his assistance, but knows that Zod still functions. The laser lance is destroyed, but with the help of his fellow GoBots like Screwhead and the humans, Leader 1 jumps down to finish his arch-nemesis near the center of the Earth, and after much struggle, Zod is finally defeated. This celebration over Zod's death is cut short, however. Turbo, Scooter, Leader 1, and the Guardians are thrilled to see the command center flying above them to pick them up. However, Cycle is at the helm of the ship. Firing on his enemies, Cycle blasts the Guardians to pieces and collects the remnants with a tractor beam on board. In the wake of the damage, Turbo, Spacey, and the humans unite together for a suicide mission to rescue Scooter, who was taken hostage. But the casualties of the command center's death ray do not go unnoticed, as the remaining Guardians lift the lifeless body of Leader 1 into his final resting place. In yet another strange moment, the Guardians relay their relationship with Leader 1, most notably Major Domo, who says, "He was like a son to me. I am as much to blame for his sins." If a father taking on the sins of his son is not biblical enough for you, then directly following this, we see the appearance of the dark angel Eno once again, as he looks to the sky and sees an ethereal man dressed as a pilot, who tells him, "Eno, rivo sonosem et, imach no imach." Backwards, this reads, "Come on home, the mission's over, one." Turbo catches a ride on Spacey to the command center, and there's no mention of it here, but remember, you can either ride or be ridden. There's a few pages of action here as we see Turbo fight through the command center, including a moment where he uses a fry basket to dump scalding hot liquigen on Tank's head and toss Loco into the disintegrator. Cycle plans to use the technology in the command center to discover who he truly is, as Leader 1 recorded all reprogramming sessions. Turbo finds the enemy reprogramming center and looks up the logs from the first time he rescued Scooter, all the way back when his mind was scrambled. Here we learn the truth, that Scooter asked Leader 1 to wipe his memory following the end of the GoBot uprising, saying that he did not want to remember. It was all too much. During the process, however, Turbo entered and grabbed Scooter out of the machine too early, causing his brain damage. Cycle announces that they will start conducting experiments on their captives, something that his minions don't seem to be a fan of. What experiments is he talking about? Will they lead the way to discovering their origins? That's a great question. But before it can be answered, Turbo comes sliding in on his back, firing wildly against the renegades as Crasher runs away in fear. There's a moment of calm between Turbo and Cycle, though, as the two discuss what should be done next. Leader 1 wiped the memories of not only Scooter, but also the renegades, including Cycle. All of the GoBots are searching for answers, except for Turbo, who somehow escaped this fate. He begins to agree with Cycle on leading a new Gobotron, one without armies and command centers. But before terms can be agreed upon, the humans notice a table of dead test subjects that Cycle has been experimenting on. This moment causes the two bots to attack, with Cycle firing his head laser and Turbo dropping to the ground and firing his weapons. Cycle shoots first, but Turbo does not miss. In his final moments, we get to see Cycle's origins as a bot named Go Cycle Red, a GoBot designed not for humans to ride, but for other GoBots to ride. In the end, Cycle was made to be ridden. Crasher is still on the loose, however, and she threatens Turbo and the now rescued Scooter while locked away in the command center's bridge. Turbo is done with all of this violence, though, and offers Crasher a chance for surrender. The war between their leaders is over. Let it die with them. Something that Crasher agrees to. With this newfound alliance, Turbo leads the GoBots off of Earth to create a new Gobotron society, one made in the image of GoBots and not humans. Speaking of, 2 of the human astronauts stay on Earth, while the others venture off with Spacey aboard the command center. I should note that 3 of the 4 astronauts do have names, but it's never quite specified who is who, which is why I have omitted that information up until now. As the command center and thruster arrive on the surface of Gobotron, our band of characters are ambushed by Braxis and his swarm of Vamp. All hope seems to be lost as the GoBots face their end, until a laser sword slices through Braxis and his army of monster GoBots. It is the mythical Road Ranger we heard of before from the Trade Federation. He arrives just in time with a band of larger and stranger-looking Titan GoBots such as Bugbite and Baron Von Joy. This is Road Ranger's crew of forgotten GoBots, and this is how they roll. Crasher takes note of this sudden change of leadership as the GoBots begin to follow Road Ranger, a moment that Turbo responds to with the ever-relevant phrase, "The king is dead. Long live the king." This phrase is commonly used in monarchies when one ruler of the throne is preceded by another. The idea being that the man who is king may die, but the status, the nature, the idea of the king lives forever. It will never fade, as another man will take on the role. The king, the person, is dead, but the king, the title, lives on. Road Ranger is the new king of the GoBots, and with this title in hand, he calls forth his people to transform and roll out. Scooter takes a rest aboard the command center, while Turbo sees Spacey off with his human companions. As it turns out, the dematerializer on board is actually a time machine, and the humans plan to use it to go back in time and warn humanity of the GoBot uprising. Turbo himself decides to rest for a moment, saying that someone else can do the driving, as we see a memory of AJ and Hunter driving through the desert. Spacey and the humans cautiously walk through the time machine, hoping it will send them back to Earth before the GoBot uprising. Whether it works or not, we are not told yet. Even the GoBots left behind admit that they will be blissfully ignorant of the consequences of time travel. We are given a glimpse of the past, where we see Cycle and Leader 1 being brought online and playing basketball with each other. The GoBotics technician on site says the two play together nicely, as we see Professor Braxis and T. Coriander Banks standing menacingly in the background. Additionally, Loco, the GoBot train that was thrown into the time machine when it was known as the Dematerializer, lives alongside humans in the old Western days, giving us a clue that this machine is indeed a time travel device. On Gobotron, Road Ranger announces to the public that there is more than meets the eye to their own home, and that Earth must be left behind. Gobotron opens up and blasts away from Earth, leaving the 2 planets to grow on their own. The humans advance through the ages as they leave the Rock Lords to their own island. Some GoBots remain on Earth and act as giant guardians. The comic even quoting the Hebrew Bible and saying, "The giants were on Earth in those days." There are still threats, such as the evil Rock Lord Magmar, who threatens the humans, only to be dispatched by Screwhead, who decided to stay behind and protect humanity as they grew. Gobotron races through the stars in search of a new galaxy to reside in, when Bugbite asks Road Ranger what his ultimate goal is. Road Ranger plans to seed the multiverse with several planets containing GoBot life. He reveals that he has built a son, one to carry his legacy and lead the new generation, a GoBot that is optimized. He recommends that Bugbite does the same. Leader 1 and Cycle remain offline as Road Ranger decides they are too much trouble to regenerate. Instead, he takes the best parts of each of them and constructs a new GoBot, a familiar-looking red, gray, and blue jet. On Earth, Spacey and the astronauts land and warn the government of the impending GoBot uprising, an event that is just beginning. Earth officials are skeptical at first, until they realize that the GoBots are building a space station known as Gobotron. There might still be some time to stop the war. The final panel of the comic modifies a quote from William Makepeace Thackeray's novel Barry Lyndon, originally published in 1844, although the quote is more associated with Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of the story in his 1975 film of the same name. The original quote being, "It was in the reign of George III that the aforesaid parsonages lived and quarreled. Good or bad, handsome or ugly, rich or poor, they are all equal now." This quote, both in its original form and the modified one for the comic, emphasizes that despite our different appearances, moralities, wealth, and more, death brings us all to a state of equality. GoBots has never been a franchise that I gave much attention to. After all, it had a very short life cycle before being enveloped by Hasbro after the Tonka acquisition. The GoBots do appear here and there in other Transformers media, of course, even getting their own figures lately in the Legacy and Age of Primes toy lines, but for the most part, they've been left dormant. It wasn't until my wife found a few issues of this series at a local store that I was sent on my quest to learn more. I knew there was a 2018 GoBots comic, and I knew it had ties to Transformers, but I had never expected it to be so dark, thought-provoking, and strangely prophetic all at the same time. The logic in this comic follows no rules, just as the tonality of the story shifts and changes on a whim's notice. How is it exactly that Leader 1 and Psycho become Starscream? What happens in the timeline where Spacey and the humans return to stop the GoBot uprising? Eno is obviously an angelic version of Leader 1, but is he real? Is he just a dream? Nothing is ever answered in this comic. It's mostly just expected of us to follow along and accept the nonsense. Fathers taking on the sins of their sons, dark angels heralding the way of a god, humanity, the creator, being destroyed by its own creation, GoBots create a new world in their own image, rock lords coming into being from the dust of the ground. As the title of this video suggests, it's all oddly biblical and philosophical in a way. Does the philosophy and heavy dialogue work in retrospective? Not quite. As again, this comic's tone is constantly changing, and yet it's not entirely inaccurate to the media it's calling back to. Scioli does an incredible job drawing and coloring this comic as if it came out in the late 70s to early 80s. This man is just a genius. He knows his art. And the pages themselves are full of comic book references like the before-mentioned Captain America and Wolverine nods, as well as the covers themselves being homages to classic Daredevil issues. At the end of the day, GoBots is a strange tale about autonomy, gods, and what it means to ride or be ridden. No one character is truly good, save for Turbo, who still makes choices that forever change his friend Scooter. It's a common thread that Scooter chooses to forget the horrors of the war, and in trying to stop this, Turbo eventually is the one who must live with the memories. Leader 1 is a complicated bot who clings on to his human pilot in his chest cavity for years, but still, he chooses to rule with an iron fist and wipe the memories of all GoBots in order to rule over Gobotron. And Psycho? Well, for the most part, he is just a simple bad guy, and yet we see that even his own origins came from a place of compliance with the humans. GoBots were made for humanity to use, but they were also made in humanity's image, something that of course leads to the inevitable downfall of humanity itself. You know, it's funny. I've said multiple times that I wouldn't be doing videos that are an hour long, and yet here we are. Here we are. It's strange, as I don't really ever plan to make these videos long, and yet something just happens during the process where I just keep talking and I keep thinking, and I honestly can't sleep when these types of videos pop up in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, I need a little break from all of this. Yeah. Seems like a good time for a rest.